And we are here to have a community meeting to talk about the Oro Valley Parks and Recreation Master Plan and specifically to unveil the updated concept plans that were presented in November. And so I would like to introduce myself to the group. So far, we have about 19 participants. My name is Christy Diaz-Trahan, and I am the Parks and Recreation Director for the town of Oro Valley. Behind me is the Narongha Park sign. So this is my virtual background. I love it. With me this evening are the consultants with Pros Consulting, as well as with Kimley Horn and the Breckenridge Group. They will be guiding the discussion this evening to talk about the concept plans. We will be have a brief introduction with regard to the connectivity analysis. The presentation will be about, say, 45 minutes or so. And then at that point, we will open it up to questions. Brandon Lau is our facilitator this evening. So when we get to the Q&A section, he'll walk through that with everyone. So that way everyone has an understanding of how the process works. This meeting is scheduled from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. And so we will be as efficient, but yet informational as possible. So that way you have all that updated information and giving extra time for you, the audience, to ask some questions. The next steps in the process will be presented at the end of the presentation. But if someone has to leave before that, we will have our regular Park and Recreation Advisory Board meeting on Tuesday, January 19th at 6 p.m. on Zoom. And that information can be found on the Town of Oro Valley webpage. And so right now I would like to introduce Mike Svetz with Pros Consulting. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for the opportunity again to be in front of you and walk you through another set of information related to the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. With us tonight, we'll have Rebecca Field and Melinda Pittman from Kimley Horn, as well as Clint Breckenridge and Carlos D'Alva from Breckenridge Associates to help walk through the actual concept plans. At this point, I'm going to share my screen so that we can tee up the presentation, and hopefully everybody can see that. And we'll get started. So as Rebecca had mentioned, or as Christy had mentioned, we are going to walk through connectivity analysis, an example of that. We are not yet completed with that. We expect to be completed with that within the next week to 10 days. However, we wanted to tee this up for you since we know that trails in the community is certainly a high priority. So you can kind of understand what we are able to accomplish within the scope of this project related to trails. We'll also review the final concept plans, a little bit more on that, and then kind of take the next steps and questions, as Christy had mentioned. So wanted to take a moment to kind of give you an understanding of where the connectivity analysis and concept plans fit within the overall master plan. And so we have provided you, a number of times kind of an overview of the process, but we also want you to know that, there is more to the master plan than just what is being presented tonight. And so, of course, you're very familiar with the community needs assessment. There's also been a park and facility assessment. We have completed level of service standards and equity mapping. We're also doing a program and pricing assessment as part of the project, partnership review. And then, of course, you have the connectivity analysis and concept plans. But then as also more importantly, or maybe as importantly, We will have capital improvement recommendations, including dollars and cents associated with that, and then the funding strategies that will be necessary in order to implement the plan as a whole. So I think it's important to recognize that we're going to show you some exceptionally powerful images this evening, of which you all have had an opportunity to weigh in on via the town's website. But we want to ensure that you recognize that there is more to this master plan than what it is that we're going to share with you this evening. So the connectivity analysis, and I'm going to turn this over to Rebecca here in a second from Kimberly Horn, but really the scope was, I don't want to say limited, but it was something that we actually added to the phase 2 of the project after your community needs assessment. This is not something that was originally identified as a task as part of the master plan. But when we recognize the high priority in which trails resonates within the community, we felt we had to try and make an effort and make an attempt to better understand how you can, at the very least, improve the existing trail system. So the scope is really just to identify missing trail segments right now, identify possible opportunities to expand the trail system, generally speaking, and also to prioritize those opportunities and get us an understanding of what the costs are associated with that. So at this point, I will mute and turn it over to Rebecca to walk through, to be able to walk through with you a couple of examples of the connectivity analysis.
Thank you, Mike. So again, my name is Rebecca Field. I'm a landscape architect with Kimberly Horn here in Tucson. And as Mike mentioned, we, through the process of the community outreach, understood how important trails, open space, and overall connectivity is for the Oro Valley community. So this is just an example of what we're looking at in terms of looking at the trails network that the town has, and the base map, the aerial that you see, and some of the line work is based on the town's GIS system. And it shows some of the existing shared use path, soft paths, and other pathway systems within the town. And what we're looking for are ways and opportunities to connect some of the infrastructure to other desired destinations, or looking at how to really expand the network in the best way possible for the community. So this is an example north of Tangerine. And we know that there is a shared use pathway south of Tangerine, and it runs along Tangerine as well. And a small portion goes up to the north of Tangerine, but there's an opportunity along the Big Wash to extend that connection all the way to Rancho Vistoso Boulevard and provide connectivity for that community to ultimately be able to, without a vehicle, go down a trail, continue, and then, as you see in option or in item B, connect across Oracle Road in a more direct way to Catalina State Park. So this is one of those areas where it's really filling in a few of the gaps, but creating a nice connected network of non-vehicular use trails. Mike, if we can go on to the next slide. So here's another example of 3 opportunities we see in one area to expand the existing trails network and look at how to again focus on non-motorized uses and bring the opportunity for pedestrians and bicyclists and other non-motorized users to go from one destination to the next. Item A is a pedestrian bridge across the Cdo Wash, which would connect Riverfront Park to Cdo Linear Park Multi-Use Path, which is a 2.69 mile pathway system. So it would enable users of Riverfront to easily go across the Cdo and then connect up to that larger pathway system. We recognize there are, it's not necessarily an easy thing to put a bridge over a wash, but it's an opportunity, and it's something that we can explore as part of this process, and then in later recommendations as well. Item B is extending the multi-use path that currently runs along Cdo Wash and taking that path to the south along some open space areas. There are some roadways that would run along that are wide enough to allow for that shared use path within the right of way and off road. And it provides a connection linking up with a small piece of shared use path that exists all the way down to James D. Cray Park. So it would provide again, a seamless opportunity for users at Riverfront to go all the way down to James D. Cray. And then item C, is shown on this map, is a recommended multi-use path connection towards the Coronado National Forest and the Linda Vista Trailhead. It just broadens the network and provides that secondary opportunity for users of either Riverfront or James D. Cray, and then the adjacent communities to be able to easily access Coronado and the trails there that Linda Vista serves. We're also showing an example of what these paths might look like. It's basically a continuation of some of the shared use paths that are already in the system within Oro Valley. But the recommendation is a 12-foot wide paved multi-use path that would enable joggers, bicyclists, walkers, people with strollers to really be able to utilize this space and have sufficient room to do so. So again, 2 examples. We're looking at other opportunities, but we just wanted to share this with you because we know it's an important part of the community's desires for the Parks and Rec network. Mike?
Great, thank you, Rebecca. So the next step we wanted to share with you, or next set of information, is the concept plans. And so when we talk about concept plans, I think it's very important to recognize that there is an entire process that goes into developing what we call a site-specific park master plan. So an individual master plan for an individual park. And what we wanted to ensure is that you understood where these concept plans kind of fit within the overall process of developing and ultimately realizing improvements to your individual parks. So, of course, the community need is foundational related to developing parks. We want to ensure that the parks are going to be productive in terms of the experiences that you desire. And of course, we want the parks to be utilized. And then there's a whole lot of other effort that goes into utilizing those community needs, as we showed previously, in terms of all of the components associated with the system-wide master plan. But ultimately, the concept plans are really what we would call a pre-design phase. The elements that are shown in some of these park concepts are certainly things that will need much further exploration, such as engineering, such as topography, such as soil samples, such as potentially environmental concerns. So we're really looking at this at a high level, and Clint will reiterate this as he goes through the community center, but will these elements fit within the park? Will they fit in the identified locations that we have will show you in these concept plans? But they are not meant to be construction documents. There is a next set of phasing or design phasing that is called a schematic design phase, where you really start to investigate all alternative design concepts. And typically, this also will include a pretty high level opportunity for or a significant opportunity for the public to engage and re-engage in the design process for individual parks. The next set, once we kind of get beyond that, it really becomes a landscape architect and engineering process in conjunction with town staff, where you really start to identify all of the details of design decisions before you're able to move into the very, very technical and specific construction documents. So we want you, though, to recognize that these concept plans we feel very good about them, but also to recognize that they are not the end all be all. And this system-wide master plan will not be the last time in which you all as a community have an opportunity to have a say in the final design improvements associated with your park system. So the locations as determined by the master plan scope, but also determined by town council strategic plan, community center site, the community center, the facility, Steampunk Ranch, James D. Cray Park, Riverfront Park, and Narongha Park. And so at this point, I will turn this back over. Well, in 1 second, I'll turn it back over to Rebecca. So one of the things we wanted to let you know is that these concept plans have very much been vetted. We did present them to the community as a whole in November through a virtual community meeting. We did present them to the Parks and Rec Advisory Board also in November. And then the concepts had been posted on the town's website for community comment for a 1-month period from November 18th through December 18th. And during that time, we had received approximately a grand total of 321 plus comments, 281 via the town's website, and another 40 or so with direct email to town staff and or town council. And we have then taken those comments and basically have revised those plans based on community input where it was possible for us to do so. So one thing I will let you know is that as we go through each one of these concepts, we have kind of grouped all of your comments together and kind of identified the key ones that we were able to make some improvements in, and then also some key ones where they just weren't possible because they just wouldn't work with regards to the plan, and or the complementary uses between each of the park plans and or community center site. So at this point, I will turn it back over to Rebecca to walk through the community center site. Then we'll turn it over to Clint to walk through the improvements associated with the community center based on your comments. And then finally turn it back over to Rebecca to kind of take us home through the rest of the park site specific master plans.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike. So again, first we'll look at the community center in terms of the site plan itself. So we have here the existing imagery of the community center. And if you could flip to the next slide, Mike. We certainly got some feedback on the site itself. We got a lot of feedback on the community center building and the design, which Clint will go into much more detail on, but we wanted to touch on some of the site comments that were received. And as Mike mentioned, this is certainly not to imply that these were all the comments, but these were some of the most frequent comments. And these were also the comments that we could incorporate as part of the revision to the plan, which I will show you in just a bit. But we did receive quite a bit of positive feedback regarding the pickleball court expansion, also positive feedback on the tennis court upgrades. Those were items that really were strongly desired and needed for the community. And so those items certainly are moving forward as part of this concept. We also heard that parking and just the parking lot in general was inadequate. There's not enough parking, and there were significant concerns about the ability to have additional programming within the community center with the current parking situation that is on site. Another recommendation that was received was the fact that this is an area also for children, and perhaps we should consider having an opportunity for children to be able to have a space on the site as well. Also, so in the gray were comments that we did receive, and we understood that they are important aspects of this. But as Mike mentioned, the programming and some of the detail that would be required, for example, with the solar and the EV charging stations, are things that can be addressed later down the line during more detailed design and as the need arises specifically per park and per situation. For the basketball courts, we understood that that is something community-wide that was desired, and those courts are being added in some of the different park areas. And so the suitability to add those to this one was not necessarily captured within this site. So Mike, if you could flip to the next slide. So what we have is the updated site plan, and with the boxes on the text are some of the areas that I will highlight as part of this discussion. As Mike mentioned, we did go through these concepts back in November, and so this evening we'll just touch on some of the main items that we wanted to highlight based on the community feedback that we received. So the parking was a big one. We understood that the parking needed to be studied further. And so with this concept, and we're not showing striping because again, that's a detailed item, but we have gone through the exercise to look at the parking lot configuration and look at ways to reconfigure to increase the maximum number of stalls. And the overall footprint that you see in this updated exhibit represents a 40% increase from the current parking capacity that's on site. So that's a significant increase, understanding that there are some restrictions. There's some privately owned property that we cannot encroach on at this time. And so, you know, we're looking at the space that we have, and by looking at the parking orientation and optimizing that, we were able to get that 40% increase in the parking capacity. Again, just wanted to highlight the positive. We did get a lot of positive comments on the tennis court and the pickleball courts, including the expansion of the courts, of the pickleball courts, which is item 8. So those items are definitely moving forward as part of this concept plan recommendation. And then item 9 is the small outdoor play space that's associated with the child care center inside the facility. So it's a very nice opportunity to partner with what's happening inside the building and bring that outside the building as well. So these are the main changes that were incorporated based on the community feedback for the site specifically on this community center. But I will pass it over to Clint to talk further about the interior improvements.
Thank you, members of the community, Christy, Mike, thanks so much for giving us this opportunity to continue to work with Oro Valley on the community center. The community center survey, which was done last year, really gave us some direction and insights as to how to modify the community center and really create one community center as opposed to the existing building with a collection of parts. This is perfect. A lot of the positive feedback, as Rebecca mentioned, that we received was related to increasing in recreation and fitness spaces. And there's a lot of potential with the facility and underutilized and inefficient spaces that can be reconfigured and reworked to accommodate a lot more weight equipment, a lot of cycles and exercise machines, and to give us that opportunity to increase those spaces. There was some comments that we received on the initial plan about reducing the size of the bar and providing more table space. Really a wonderful opportunity on that lower level to have the interaction between outside and inside after a round of golf, having a beer, after working out, getting a fruit drink, and sitting there and enjoying the wonderful weather that we have. And today is an example of that. It's just really beautiful outside. There was a comment about covered outdoor seating. We're going to park our bodies and sit out there. And there's a great location on the west side that can support the bar and support a multi-purpose space. And responding to some of the comments about large group gatherings for golf tournaments or birthday parties or other events, a really neat flexible space that can take advantage of our weather, but also indoor space that accommodates a lot of activities that can be staged and restaged how you need that. And then reworking the golf shower area. We see a need for accommodating a lot of opportunities with lockers and showers, and changing the golf entry, making that a little bit more prominent, and expanding some of the space of that locker room. There were some comments regarding the restaurant upstairs. It's been a challenge for that, and our recommendation based on the comments is to bring that restaurant downstairs, allowing more space to happen upstairs for fitness and exercise and some other multi-purpose spaces that we showed earlier. So here's our existing plan. And one of the things that we see here is a building that has two entrances that we described last time. It has that funny entrance that's neither on the first floor or the second floor. And you'll see in the plan of the first floor, how we can resolve that and bring people directly into that lower level. And then really changing the entrance over on the north side where fitness is, but have people come through the main entrance. And it makes it much more efficient for the users to get around in the building, and also for staff to supervise and operate the building. So you can see over on the left side of the screen that area has been reconfigured for those community spaces, flexible classroom space, a multi-purpose space down there that could be used for tennis events or swim meets or other activities, but yet be turned over maybe to some casual space. In the classrooms, we see operable partitions that classrooms can be large or small. If there's a bridge tournament or something that happens and you need to have more space versus sort of the daily opportunities that go on, flexible partitions and flexible walls really give you that opportunity. And then obviously some judicious use of storage in the space as well. As you move down to the middle of the orange area, taking advantage of possibly removing some of the walls of racquetball courts. We've done this before. We've taken out walls, and certainly there is a large technical effort involved with that, but that can be done. And still saving some racquetball courts, changing some of those into more efficient multi-use spaces with minimum efforts. Those can be reconfigured, but allowing a lot of space for machines and for exercise, cardio, fitness, workout area throughout that whole area. And then moving down, taking advantage of one of the spaces, becoming an aerobics room, putting the appropriate flooring in there as a possibility. And then down on the far right side of the orange is a multi-purpose space. Then that could open up into a covered outdoor parking, I keep saying parking, but outdoor seating area. And then as you move up into the red area, kind of reconfiguring the bar, making that a little bit smaller. I think at first iteration, we had a much larger bar, and we got comments back that it doesn't need to be that big because we have ample tables. Those could be high tables or low tables, depending upon what that food and beverage operator would like to see. And then moving up to the green area, here's another plan that really shows some of the spaces configured. Green would be golf. There would be some offices next to there. The entrance is off of an outside corridor. You come in on this lower level that you see now, entering right through the building. And this view really sort of shows that we can regrade the entrance, take out the stairs, reconfigure that lobby, and come right in and really experience the building firsthand and capture the views looking straight through the building. Golf can be entered independently. So if operations extend later in the day or not later in the day, that can be controlled. And then as you move up above golf, there's a yellow area that we see as the golf locker room, really providing a lot more space for that area. And how that gets refigured will work out in detail as the plans evolve with the size and composition of lockers. Certainly, golf lockers are much different than PE lockers and fitness lockers. So providing a specific kind of experience for the golfer that can be used and programmed up there. Down in the bottom pink area, again, you see that would be a covered patio out there, taking advantage of some of the existing walkway, but expanding that much to the west, and then really being adjacent to the multi-purpose room in orange. So those are garage doors or nano walls, as they're called today, where you could open that up, become one space, and used in a variety of ways, not limiting its function to one setup or another, but giving some real flexibility there. At the same time, again, today, beautiful sunsets today. Sitting out on that patio, having a cocktail or a meal really would be exciting. And I think that's it. So I'll turn it back over to you, Mike.
Thanks, Clint. We'll move on to the Steampunk Ranch site. And again, start off by showing the existing facility. So we're looking at the Steampunk Ranch in its entirety and recognizing the historic value that this site has. Some of the main comments that we received, again, not all, but this is a summary of some of the main comments. There was a lot of concern regarding lawn, and we heard that we recognized on the previous iteration that we showed, we utilized a light green color for some of the just background landscape area, and definitely noted that appeared that there could be more lawn being added than what was intended. So we have addressed that as part of the plan that you'll see on the next slide, recognizing that there is a time and a place for lawn, and it is limited to what was originally shown on the master plan. Also, we heard that parking capacity is limited. We were hoping to encourage non-vehicular modes of travel. We're looking at connections to the adjacent loop and then looking for ways to optimize the parking within Steampunk Ranch. We know it can be very crowded. There was also significant concern regarding the use of this historic park for recreation activities in consideration of the original master plan and really what the overall function of this site is. It has a tremendous historic value to the community and is a site that has a lot of significance in terms of the structures and the uses that took place on this site. And it really becomes a balance between the history and then the positive recreation feedback that we received as well in terms of how this site has been activated for public use in additional ways. We have received positive feedback on the new entry building and the restrooms. And so it was a balance in looking at this revised plan on how to address the concerns regarding the historic portion and recognizing and respecting the importance of the history of this site, paired with some of the needs of the community and some of the additional feedback that we received on the benefits of some of the activities that take place on this site. So you'll see a little bit of that balance as we move into the concept plan. Another comment that we received was continuing the improvements to the heritage garden and the heritage planting areas that are on site. We know that there is a garden that is being maintained, that there are some native orchards that are planted. And so we are looking at ways to expand that and make sure that important agricultural history is also celebrated at this site. One of the comments that also had quite a bit of back and forth within the community discussion was a play area for children. We recognize that is something that could be of value at this location. However, we felt that the activities that the town provides for children during certain events, such as some of the lawn games that have been set up and some of the other activities are sufficient and appropriate for this particular site, again, given the history. And so that was one item that was not specifically included, but again, is addressed in some of the community setup and some of the events that take place on this site, but not a permanent fixture. So moving to the plan itself. Again, the boxes are the areas specifically that I'll highlight as part of this discussion in terms of the results of the community discussion. Item 7 is the need to renovate and or restore all historic structures as needed. This item applies to all of the historic structures. It is important and necessary that upgrades be made to all of the historic structures so that they are safe and effective for ongoing public use and activities that are taking place on the site. So I wanted to make sure that was clear and that the intent is for all of the structures to be restored and updated as needed across the site. Also wanted to call attention to the access to the loop. The loop is an important amenity, and again, going back to the the fact that trails and open space are such an important part of what the community has asked for, making sure the connections from this amenity to the loop and beyond, where the loop connects to many other places, is strengthened and encouraged, so that we do see those non-vehicular users able to access this site via the loop and via other methods, so that we can relieve some of the parking challenges that we see. And we'll get into parking a little bit here in a bit as well. Item 10, again, highlighting the fact that we did receive quite a bit of positive feedback on the entry building. This item was shown in the final revision to the master plan. And so this is an item that was part of that original planning process. And it's something that we did receive a lot of feedback in a positive way regarding setting a tone and a location, a set destination point for an entry sequence to this park. Other items that I'd like to touch on are items 12 and 13, which are the stage and the concert area, in addition to the outdoor event space. Recognizing the concern regarding some of the activities that take place within the historic core, we're balancing that with, again, the tremendous desire by a large portion of the community to have these events take place. And so recognizing that this site did in the past, and as part of its historic time period, it did host celebrations and other types of activities during some of the historic periods of significance. So we're looking, again, to balance the recreation side and some of the more modern uses with, again, the historic core, and looking for the right areas to accomplish that. And so where we're showing it is actually it was the old pool area that was a place of recreation for the residents that lived on Steampunk Ranch. Other items, item 17 is the heritage garden, and also just, again, calling attention to the native landscape, and that the intent here is to not add additional lawn. It's really to focus on the heritage plantings, focus on that, the garden areas as identified, and then look to the rest of the site as a native planting mix, and recognizing that in the historic time period of significance, there certainly weren't a lot of ornamental plantings, especially around the steam pump area and the Proctor Lieber house, and in those specific locations, the Push family area as well. So we're minimizing the lawn to the areas where it was shown on the master plan, and then really incorporating the desert landscape elsewhere throughout the site. In terms of the road and circulation, what we're seeing in items 26 and 27 is a refurbishment of the gravel road and parking areas, along with updated vehicular circulation, which is there at item 27, to create a safer movement for the vehicles. And then also we are increasing the amount of parking in this updated version to make sure that we are addressing that concern regarding limitations with parking on this site. And then lastly, again, I'll call attention to the historic core boundary, just to show that this is the area that's specifically referenced as the historic piece of Steampunk Ranch, whereas some of the adjacent areas are not considered part of the historic core. So we are limited in what we can do within that area within the orange box, and we're trying to respect and honor the history of that and what was intended in the initial master plan. So we can move on to James D. Cray Park. Again, here's the existing site, and we can go into some of the comments that we received as part of the concept plans that were initially presented. We received quite a few comments regarding adding lights to the walking loop. We heard that. We think it's a great idea, and that is something that has been incorporated. We also understood the need for additional basketball courts, so that is something that has been incorporated as part of this plan update. We received a lot of positive feedback regarding the addition of the new playground, the off-leash dog park, the expansion of the aquatic center, and then also the additional parking connections. So those items are intact and are remaining and we appreciate the feedback on those as well. We've also heard that lights at volleyball courts would be very needed and very nice to have for the community. So those are that's an additional item that has been added. But there was concern that we heard regarding noise and lights from the parking and maintenance yard. So we've made sure to address that through proper screening and placement. There was also concern regarding access to the diamond fields for Oro Valley baseball. And we wanted to share that there are discussions, and as Mike mentioned, there's a separate part of this master planning process regarding partnerships. And one of the partnerships that the town is looking at is a partnership with the Amphi School District. And if there are questions on that, we can discuss in more detail during the Q&A. But there is an opportunity for partnership and access to some of the school facilities as well that we can discuss in more detail. Lastly, there was concern regarding the removal of the racquetball courts. We heard that on a couple of the projects. And again, balancing the trade-offs between what is appropriate for the site and what fits best programmatically. In this case, the addition of the basketball court made more sense for this facility, especially given the condition of the racquetball court and again, the overall function of the site. So if we could move to the next slide. This is the concept, and again, focusing on the boxed areas where we wanted to highlight some of the feedback and some of the discussion that we went over and that we heard from the community. The volleyball court, item 6, is shown as a lighted sand volleyball court. We are demolishing the existing racquetball courts, and we're converting those to new basketball courts in item 7. So that is, again, recognizing the need for additional basketball courts and hearing that over and over again on the comments. Item 12, we heard some positive feedback also on the expansion of the future aquatic center, and it was good to have that as a planned area. So that is certainly something that we are showing, and that is appropriate again for that planning for the future and looking at future funding opportunities for items like that expansion. And just because we're in that area, I'll jump to 26, which is updating the pump room and equipment. That's something that we've heard is a necessity and something that would really go a long way in helping with the function of the aquatic center. As we move down to the next boxed area, there's quite a few. Item 17, that the relocated maintenance facility did receive some concerns regarding the proximity to the adjacent residences. And one of the items that I'll call everyone's attention to is the vegetation buffer that is being included as item 23. There's a drainage channel that is being incorporated there. And then in addition to that, a heavily planted buffer to assist in screening and helping with some of the concerns regarding the noise and potential lights from the park, the new parking area, which is item 22, and then that maintenance facility. Again, it's a balance between looking at the uses on the site and kind of figuring out where the best location is for some of these events, for some of these activities, and through proper screening and placement, the impacts to adjacent residents will be minimized. We also wanted to point out the lighted walking loop around the park. That's item 18. It's a 3/4 mile walking loop that will be lit in response to many of the comments that we received. We also had great feedback on the off-leash dog park, the new playground, small ramadas, and then definitely heard that there was a lot of enthusiasm about refurbishing the existing playground as well, is item 21. We briefly touched already on items 22 and 23, which is the new parking areas and the drainage channel with the planted buffer. But again, lots of positive feedback about the connectivity between the lots and making it easier to go from one area to the next within this park for users. So we appreciate that feedback, and that is something that has been incorporated and is shown here on this plan. So moving to our next park, Cdo Riverfront Park. We certainly had a lot of comments on this one. And again, here's the existing plan showing the two multi-use fields and then the diamond fields. And so as we flip to the comments that we received, there was concern, a significant amount of concern regarding the removal of those fields. So as you'll see in the updated concept plan, we are not showing that removal. Those multi-use fields will stay, and recognizing that those are very important to the community to stay as they are. So we heard that, and we have incorporated that as part of this revision. We did receive a lot of positive feedback regarding the addition of the splash pad and the updated playground. So again, those are items that have stayed despite the reconfiguration that we did with keeping the multi-use fields. The splash pad and updated playground is definitely still part of the program. Basketball courts, this is another area where we heard that the community wanted additional basketball courts, but there was also concern regarding the removal of the one tennis court that is on site. And again, looking at trade-offs for space and overall function of the site, in this case, this site made sense to have that removal of the tennis court take place and add that basketball court to help address that need. We also, again, heard the lights regarding the volleyball court and that it would be really great to have that for the community. So we did add lights as part of the volleyball court design. And then there was concern regarding the removal of the Palo Verde trees from the parking lot. We want to reiterate that really the intent is for maintenance, and the presence of shade trees is very important. And so we have addressed that concern regarding that specific tree and are simply recommending an upgrade to the landscape and making sure that the landscape is appropriate for the maintenance requirements on site. We had a lot of concern from the maintenance staff regarding the trees that are out there. And so again, it's a balance, but understanding that mature shade trees are very important, especially within the Tucson area. Lastly, the relocation of the expanded parking was something that had quite a bit of comment on. There was concern regarding proximity to some of the adjacent residences, but then also paired with the acknowledgement that parking was an issue at this site as well. So we looked at ways to address that concern. As we move on to the updated concept plan. We can see item 2. So we have adjusted the language here to read resurface parking lot and enhance the landscaping. Again, it's a matter of balancing maintenance, making sure we have the shade, and then making sure we have that aesthetic quality that the residents love about this park. So really we're looking for just an update as needed to the landscape and to the shade, and making sure that that shade presence is sustainable for the future. The existing rectangular fields are staying. That's item 3. They will be upgraded to have LED lighting, but again, we heard you, and we understand that those are very important to stay as they were. So we have left those. We are, though, resurfacing and covering the existing basketball court and then replacing the existing tennis court with a new covered basketball court to address that need for additional basketball facilities within the town. We also added a lighted pathway to the perimeter of the park. That is a common theme throughout all the parks, that was a strong desire to have that lighted loop around the park for users to be able to take a little walk while other events take place within the site. The splash pad is in the same place as it was on the previous iteration. It's going in what is now a open lawn area, and there's a nice partnership with the playground that's just south of that. So the playground would be refurbished and updated, and then there would be that nice opportunity with the splash pad. The volleyball court, which is item 13, will have lights added to it to address that request by many of the residents within Oro Valley to have that capability and feature within the town's park system. And then we'll touch on the parking lot. That parking lot is item 19. So initially in the previous plan, it was a bigger parking expansion that wrapped around the existing diamond fields. And so we've looked at ways to optimize the amount of new parking we can get while still recognizing that concern of residents to the east and making sure that the parking is optimized within an area very close to where the existing parking is. So we're adding about 50 new spaces. It's not as many new spaces as it was in the last round, but it is a nice increase to what is there currently. And then we're providing still that separated access for the equestrian trailers so that there isn't a conflict between the path users and those that are accessing the equestrian facilities on the site. We'll move on to the final, which is the Narongha Park site plan. Again, we did receive a lot of comments on this one, and I will focus on some of the main ones that we received as they pertain to this site. We heard the basketball courts. This is a park where we've added a significant amount of courts. We also had a lot of positive feedback regarding the skate park, the pump track, and the splash pad. So appreciated all the feedback that we received on that, and it really sounds like there's a strong excitement within the community on adding those items. There was also the consideration of adding a walking path around the park and increasing the amount of dirt trails that are there. Looking again towards the connectivity and the importance of trails within the community, this is a location, given the topography, given the challenges with the riparian areas and some of the real non-buildable for traditional recreation uses, this site lends itself to adding these walking amenities that are so important and so desired by the community. There was a request of adding more pickleball courts. So in this park is where we have added a significant amount of pickleball courts. And then there was a lot of concern that we received regarding the walking archery course and the placement of adjacent paths. I want to reiterate that the walking archery courses are staying, and so we have made sure that that is clear on this updated concept. And we've adjusted the paths as needed to make sure that it's within safe distance from the archery course as well. We heard a lot about the addition of a bike extension on Narongha from First to La Cañada. That is something that will certainly be considered and addressed as part of the connectivity assessment. It's not necessarily a specific park improvement for this site, but it is more on that connectivity spectrum. And so that's something that we heard and that will be addressed as we look at the overall network and how to access our park systems from a variety of residential areas. We also heard about the additional diamond fields and the strong desire to increase the number of those for the community. Again, there is the discussion and partnership with the Amphi School District that is being discussed right now within the community. And that's something, again, that we can discuss in more detail in the Q&A. But at this time, given the uses of this particular site, we have not added additional diamond fields. So as we move on to the concept, we're showing the new rectangular use fields. That's item 2. And one thing that we wanted to point out is that the scale of this plan is difficult sometimes to wrap your head around. It's a big park area. And so these multi-use fields can be split up into a variety of uses. And so the white circle, the white squares that you're seeing there actually represent playable sports fields within that large turf area that is identified simply as the multi-use rectangular field. So soccer leagues have multiple opportunities within each of those larger rectangles to have multiple practices, multiple games going on all at the same time. So it's a significant increase in the amount of rectangular fields and uses that occur within these two large areas that are identified as number 2 on the plan. The parking areas also, again, while not necessarily a specific comment, we just wanted to highlight that there's a significant amount of parking that is being added as part of this plan because of the awareness on how parking has been a challenge. And especially with the addition of all of these amenities, parking needs to be addressed moving forward. So there is quite a bit of parking. We recognize that the site does have a lot of topography. There are some challenges versus the level of these various amenities that we're showing. And as Mike mentioned up front, this is simply a concept, and there will definitely need to be further design and detail in identifying exactly the earthwork requirements and some of the specific requirements that will enable these features to be added, and tweaks that will be necessary to accommodate some of the grade conditions. Moving on to item 5 and item 6, the addition of the basketball court. So in this design, we've added 4 additional courts in addition to the courts that we've added on the other projects or the other parks. So 4 new basketball courts, and then you can see the addition there of 9 new pickleball courts as part of this park concept. Item 8 is the new pump track, and 9 is the skate park. Again, those were items that had a lot of enthusiasm from the community, and we were excited to see that. It fits within the topography of this site, and really, given the challenges of doing some of the more traditional park amenities with the topography, these types of things really work well for this particular site in this area. So it was nice to see the positive feedback. Item 10 is the soft trail through the desert landscape. So focusing on the trails, focusing on the connections beyond that into the community, and making sure that we are highlighting the importance of trails and utilizing space that is difficult to utilize for other uses, more traditional recreational uses, by incorporating the native desert landscape and then having that trail system throughout. We are showing the splash pad that also received a lot of positive feedback. And I'll point out that the archery field is staying, and that the walking archery courses are also staying. And we have addressed some of the concerns that were raised regarding that. We've also added a lighted 8-foot paved path around the perimeter of this park facility. That's item 22. It's close to 2 miles long. It's 1.8 miles, but it would be a lighted paved pathway that would allow users to take a walk around the entire park while some of the other activities happen within the interior. And that is a summary of the changes to our concept. So I will pass this back over to Mike for further discussion.
Great, thank you, Rebecca. So our next steps, just to kind of give you an understanding of how we're coming close to landing the plane on this. So we're really hoping to land the plane on this plan within the next 3 months. We're finalizing concept plans, and the last set of plans are going to be presented, obviously, to the Parks and Rec Advisory Board as well as Town Council. As mentioned earlier, when we presented a couple of examples of the connectivity analysis, that will be completed here within the next week to 10 days and presented at the Parks and Rec Advisory Board meeting on Tuesday, January 19th. We're also in the process, parallel process of developing a capital improvement plan. We are going to present a high-level capital improvement plan that includes such things as costing out each of the concept plans that you saw this evening, as well as some other small improvements to existing park sites within the community, as well as opportunities to what it would cost to do the connectivity analysis, as well as some others. That capital improvement plan will be vetted. It will be prioritized. It will be phased. We can't do everything all at once. So what we will show on Tuesday, January 19th to the Parks and Rec Advisory Board meeting is kind of a high level rolled up capital improvement plan which then, as I mentioned, will be broken down into smaller chunks and pieces based on priority and timeline later on. Of course, we've got to have a capital improvement plan, but we also have to make sure that we identify funding and revenue strategies to actually be able to implement the capital improvement plan. We've said from the onset that we want this plan to be realistic and implementable. And that may in turn, identifying what those costs are, that may in turn mean that there might be some things that end up being outside of the 10-year window, just simply because you may not be in a position of being able to afford to do everything within the 10 years. So it's very much an iterative approach, and funding and revenue is obviously pretty critical to implementing the plan. And then, of course, the strategic action plan, which is really about what comes first, second, third, fourth, and then, of course, create that final master plan. So our presentations or opportunities for the community to engage along the way are pretty significant between now and April 7th. You can see the next 4 opportunities kind of over the next 6 to 7 weeks. Parks and Rec Advisory Board regular meeting, Town Council meeting on February 3rd. February 9th, again, another Parks and Rec Advisory Board meeting. And then we will present to you a final kind of virtual community meeting before we take the master plan forward that touches on the connectivity analysis and the capital improvement plans. We will not be showing the concept plans as part of that. So that is kind of where we are at with regards to the next steps in detail, and then how that kind of plays out related to a timeline. So at this point, we will take any questions, concerns, comments, suggestions that you may have, and I'll turn it back over to Brandon to facilitate that process.
All right, Mike, thank you so much. Chris, do you want me to jump right into it, or do you have any comments before I explain to folks how to participate?
Jump right in, Brandon.
Okay, sounds great. Well, thank you guys. Thank everyone for participating in the community meeting. As part of it, we want to hear from you guys. So I'm going to explain a little bit on how that'll work. So if you're unfamiliar with Zoom, you guys are in it right now. You can click on the participant button at the bottom of your screen. That kicks out a little side window with an option to raise your hand. So if you raise your hand, I will call on you and I'll unmute you and have the opportunity to turn your video on. And then you can ask questions of our consultant team, Christy, or any other questions in general. So at this time, I'll turn it over to the public. I will say that we're doing good on time, but if you can be mindful of the time you take when you're speaking, just so that we can make sure that we get through everybody's opportunity to speak. So with that, if you wanted to raise your hand, you're welcome to do so, and I will call on you. Just in case I went through that a little too quickly, I just wanted to repeat to everyone. You'll have to find the participants icon at the bottom of your screen. And when you click on that, it kind of kicks out the list of folks that are in this meeting, and it gives you the opportunity to raise your hand. And if you click raise your hand, I'll be notified of that, and I can call on you guys if you wish to speak.
So the silent awkwardness is a little challenging for me, and probably everyone else. We will stick around. We'll wait a few more minutes to see if anyone has any comments. It does look like someone. Yay,
Yeah.
someone. All right.
Looks like Devon or Devin, maybe. I'm gonna unmute you real quick here. There you go.
Hi there. My name is Devin Sloan. I'm a resident of Oro Valley, live in Catalina Shadows. And my question has to do with Steampunk Ranch. I was delighted to hear that in the plan, and I know it'll be really expensive, is to renovate all historic buildings. And I'm curious if any of those buildings might be able to be used for the Oro Valley Historical Society.
I can take that. So Devin, thank you. This is Christy. So yes, this plan is to prioritize the restoration of the historically significant buildings and then those beyond. Recently, the Historic Preservation Commission has put together their prioritization list, and so they want to focus on the structures within the historic core first. This fiscal year, we will be renovating the garage and putting some final security touches on the push house. We do work closely with the Historical Society, and we have right now we're in discussion with them about their use of the push house and one of the rooms there for an office space. The Historical Society has indicated to us that they're interested in the long run, utilizing the space that's currently called the TAC building for their kind of ultimate office space storage. And so, yeah, at the end of the day, we have a good relationship with the Historical Society, and we know that there's a strong desire for them to have kind of a home base at Steampunk Ranch at some point. And so as we make investments at the ranch, we'll certainly continue to be in consultation with them. We actually met them right before the holidays to talk about another sort of short-term solution that could kind of help to move the needle for some of the work that they're doing.
Cool. Thank you, Christy.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you. I don't believe we have anybody participating via phone, but just in case, I did fail to mention that if you're calling in on this meeting, you would just press *9 and that would raise your hand, and then I'd allow you to speak.
So I think that we could probably start wrapping things up. It looks like folks are starting to self-select in meeting. I do want to thank everyone for participating and listening, and remind you that on Tuesday, the 19th at 6 p.m., we will be presenting to the Park and Recreation Advisory Board a lot of the same information, as well as Mike mentioned earlier, more analysis with regard to the connectivity component and CIP. There will be another opportunity if you have given some thought to other concepts, another opportunity to speak then. And then as every single PRAB meeting that we have, again, that's another opportunity for you to provide some feedback and comment to us. So Brandon, are there any other hands before we head out?
Yeah, it looks like Vicky may have unmuted herself. Vicky, do you have anything?
Hey guys, my name's Vicky Lair. I also live on El Conquistador Golf Course, but I was really interested in seeing all of the changes that you have made to the parks in general. But it raised a question for me. All of the wonderful lights that you're suggesting adding to these amenities accommodates evening use, which is fabulous in the desert, in the heat, that we have some possibilities for nighttime use for the young kids as well as the people who are walking and that sort of thing. But I just wonder if you have any security concerns. I used to be a commercial property manager, and I know that the #1 issue for outdoor parks is security, particularly at night. And I just wondered, had there been any thoughts given to that at all? Any concerns issued, raised? And maybe I'm naive coming from a different area that this is even a concern at all, which would be lovely to think about.
I'll take that. And then if Mike and Rebecca, if you want to jump in, if you feel the need. So as we, security is the safety and security of our park users is our first and foremost importance. Yes, we want them to have fun. We want them to connect with each other and connect with the park and our community and all of those wonderful emotional pieces, but you have to feel safe and have a safe experience.
Right.
And so lighting those walkways is one of those measures of safety, so you can see where you're stepping, so you're not, if there's a critter slithering across or walking across, in terms of that level of safety. Also, there's a lot of technology right now with park safety related to cameras. And so as we drill down to some of the level of detail and looking at making improvements, we do work closely with Oro Valley Police Department, and they actually sat in on early on discussions that we've had over the course of the year. And, from event management, from the events that we do in our parks, all the way up to improvements, even, in terms of, we're looking to put a restroom at the archery range. We got a matching grant from Arizona Game and Fish. And so it was a great project. And we consulted with them in terms of, look, we want to put the restroom here. And is this going to be a blind spot? Is this going to be a hiding space? And so we consult with them on a regular basis to ensure that they're, that we get their thumbs up on the any renovation projects or new projects that we have coming on board.
Well, I would just mention that I have watched this process play out for years now, have attended all the meetings, and I've not heard anything about security. It's wonderful that you on your end are considering it and making it a very top priority. I think it would be helpful to all of the people who, like me, are watching this process, that is relayed, so that everybody else understands that they can move forward feeling that you understand how important it is and that you have made allowances for the security. I'm not even sure how you would go about that, but maybe on one of your bullet points, put out what you've done to allow for security concerns, something like that.
Yeah, and Vicki, I have to tell you that's an oversight. I think that's something that we hadn't thought about, just because that's what we do. It's like, that comes with everything else. It's in our nature and in our toolbox in terms of this is what we do. But I think it's really important to bring that to light, specifically now, in our environment that we're in today and likely in the future, how important that is. And so thank you for bringing that up. We'll definitely make a point to include that within the document, to talk about, some, at least to recognize that when these things are implemented, that we'll work closely to ensure the safety and security of our users.
Yeah, Christy, if I could mention,
Thank you.
take too much time. This is Mike Svetz from Pros Consulting, but one of the things that we actually heard from the community last year was that we asked a question about why don't you use Oro Valley parks, and the not feeling safe choice was actually really, really, really low, and so the fact that people currently feel safe using your park system is an absolutely foundational element that we need to build upon when we talk about improving your park system. We want you to continue to feel safe. And I don't want to steal too much of Rebecca Field's thunder from Kimley Horn, because she's a landscape architect and I am not. But one of the things that you do when you vet true design of park systems is you do them through what is called crime prevention through environmental design standards. And so there are foundational standards that are built into designing parks that are intended simply to keep people safe and make sure that the experiences that you have are safe, and you really don't have to really be all that concerned. It's not to say that it's foolproof, but those standards go a long way to designing parks that create safe experiences. And that, I assure you, will be a part of the plan.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Rebecca?
Well, I'll just jump in just about that and reiterate the importance that we see in making sure that the facilities that are designed in parks are safe. We have worked on parks all throughout the area, and in fact, just yesterday we were on the phone with the police chief for another park that's happening in a different part of Tucson. And so the partnership and the understanding of how park facilities are used and how they can be used to the benefit of the community in terms of reinforcing that safe notion is something that is part of every aspect of the design that we consider as part of a project. So again, I appreciate, as Christy mentioned, the mention of that, because it is something that is critical in the design and the thought process that goes behind the park development process.
Great, thank you. It looks like Devon may have another question. Give me 1 second.
Okay, this is Devin again.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. You'll get it. Or not, whatever. This is probably another question for Christy, and it has nothing to do with any of these concepts, but I'm just curious. Are the lights in the parks on a timer? Sometimes I drive around in the evening and nobody's anywhere in the park and lights are on. And I'm just curious if they're on any kind of timer.
Devin, they are. So so the sport field lights that, the large kind of stadium lights, they are on based on reservation. So if a league group has paid to reserve a soccer field, we turn the lights on. We don't track whether or not they show up. So if for whatever reason they don't show up, the lights are still on. And then, if they reserve it from 6 to 8, they go off anywhere between 8 and 8:15.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Devin. I think we had another person jump in the meeting, so bear with me. I'm going to explain how to participate one more time just in case. So if you are wishing to speak and ask a question, you can find the participant icon at the bottom of your screen. Click on that, and it'll kick out a little side window where you should have the option to raise your hand. And if you click on that raise hand button, I'll be notified of that, and we'll unmute you and you can ask a question.
So I think we will call this meeting, we'll wrap it up. Again, as a reminder, if you have any other questions, concerns or comments, first of all, you can always email me, you can contact me. My information is on the website and I'm happy to get back to you. If you can also listen in and continue to participate on January 19th at our Park and Recreation Advisory Board. And so I would like to thank Brandon for being our terrific host, and our consultant team, Mike, Rebecca, Clint, Melinda, and Carlos. Thank you all for the work that you've done. And most importantly, for the community members that are still here and hanging in there, thank you for participating. Thank you for following this project. It's an exciting project, and it's a lot of fun. And once it's completed, the real fun begins in terms of implementation. So have a nice evening and stay safe out there. Keep your mask on, stay away from people, and then we'll see you on the 19th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.